Hi, I'm Janet, and in this class I'm going to show you the basic skills of sawing and the many reasons why saw blades break. So let's get started and go make some jewelry. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Check below for a list of tools for basic sawing. If you like this class, give it a thumbs up and subscribe now. On the screen I'm showing right now are 3 German saw frames. The differences are the depth of the frame. That depth allows you to saw further into your metal. Saw blades come in a dozen, like this one here, or in a gross package like this. Saw blades come in 17 sizes. On the screen I'm showing right now, you can tell that the number 1 through 8 go larger, and from 1/0 down to 8/0 go smaller. The most common sizes are 1 through 5/0. The chart below that shows you the average of what a saw blade should be used for on the thickness of gauge of metal. There's a tiny wire holding the dozen blades together. To undo this, you just take the end here and twirl it, and that loosens that wire up so that you can take it off. For the most part, you want at least 2 teeth of the saw blade to the side of the metal, or 3 at the most. By placing the blades on a white sheet of paper, you can easily see the saw blade teeth and the thicknesses of the blades. For example, I can see that this one is way smaller than that one. This one is probably the same as that one there, and that one's larger, and then this one comes in like that. I don't keep my saw blades organized in different aughts. I put them on a sheet like this and decide which one matches the side of the metal that I need. If you've been sawing for quite a while and you're still breaking lots of saw blades, one of the things to look out for is to buy quality blades. A good quality blade is a Swiss or German-made blade. So the inexpensive blades on the market, usually found in those gray back packages, they're not annealed. Annealing makes it to where your blade is nice and bendable. If you have one of those packages, grab one of your blades and see if you can do this without it breaking. Additionally, here's the tooth, like that, and then the back of the blade is like this. Right? The cheaper blades are squared off. When you try to turn, this corner is going to catch and grab your blade and break it. Where the more expensive Swiss or German blades, they are rounded on the back, making it more easier to turn. So if you're finding that you're breaking your blades when you're turning corners, and that your blade will break if you try to bend it like this, then you don't have a good quality blade. So here's an example of one of those cheap blades. I did find one in my set. Watch what happens if I try to bend it. If you do not have a jeweler's bench, just use a good sturdy table and buy a regular bench pin like this. I'll talk more about the bench pins in my later videos. This is just a regular bench pin. It costs about $3. And they have a flat side and a slanted side. You'll want to have the flat side up and put it against your table like so. And you'll see clamp it down to your table. Now the bench pins do not have this V cut into it, so you will need to take your jeweler saw and saw out a V. Don't go too very far back, just a small V like this works fine. I'm going to hang this part here on my bench. That holds it for me, so I have an extra hand free. Then I will lean into this. Now I have 2 hands free. So then I'm going to take my saw blade I'm looking over the paper to see which way is down. I want them the blade teeth to point down and out. I'm going to put the blade in the top first, like so. And I want to have space down here so that when I push this, see, this blade will travel down in that space. So you don't want this blade just naturally all the way at the end, then you can't tighten it. So again, I've got my blade in the top, and now I'm just going to lightly place the blade inside. Now I'm going to take and push my saw inward, like that. And while I'm holding it inward, I'm going to tighten the screw down. It should sound tuned. It's a little low. Let's just see if I can get it a little bit higher. That's what it should sound like. If it sounds really low, that's really bad. See how much this blade will move? We don't want it moving that much at all. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this back up. Sounds good. If I run my finger up the blade, it should snag my finger, and it does. And I come over here. I want to put this to where it's supported. It doesn't necessarily need to be way out here. And I want to just hold it like a C-clamp. I'm holding my fingers like this here to bring it down and solid. Now, if I start to push that same blade, see, it's hard to push. So you don't want a death grip on this. You want a nice light touch. See, I'm doing it with 2 fingers now. I'll just see if I can hold it over here so you can see. Let the saw blade feed itself. Alright, now I purposely chose a blade too large for this thickness of metal. It is just 1 tooth for the side of the metal. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like when you try to saw with a blade too big. It doesn't want to pull at all. How that sounds? It's because it's got 1 tooth to the side of the metal. Another reason why a blade will break is when you're sawing, this edge over here will lift up. You don't have to put a death grip on your metal to really hold it. You just need to make sure that this edge is not going to be coming up. So when you start sawing, when you come back up, that edge wants to stick up. Now, once it starts doing that, if you see it starting to come up, you take your pointing finger, go between the frame and the blade, like that. I'm not pushing at all. If I start to push, I get stressed or something, I start pushing, it gets harder. So you find yourself doing that, take a deep breath, relax, and start again. Sometimes it's good to lube the blade with wax. You can get this type of wax that's got some glycerin in it, and you just run your saw blade through that like that, and then come in and saw. If you don't have this type of lube, and you happen to have some candlesticks or some beeswax around, that works just as good. For those of you who have been sawing for a while and have had this problem, here's the cure for it. You're going to saw a straight line. You've got your blade in here that's small, and you think that's going to be right, and so you start sawing, and then all of a sudden it starts sawing off to the side instead of going straight. Instead of going straight, it's sawing off to the side, one way or another. No matter which way you turn, it's going this way or that way. Watch. See what is happening? That's because this blade is too small for the thickness of the metal. Then look at your saw blade, take it off, put your white sheet of paper down. Here's the blade I was using. Now I'm going to see about finding a blade that's a little bit bigger. This one will work just fine. See, I don't need to have them numbered out. Just buy the blades that you need from 1 to maybe 5/0 or 4/0. Just put them together, and I know that this one is too small because I can't steer it right. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger by just comparison, knowing that, okay, this one here is a little bit bigger, this one's bigger than that one. I'll go to this one and see how it works. So I redrew a new line, and I've changed to a slightly larger saw blade. I couldn't tell you what number it is. I can guess, but I know that the one that was smaller than this one, it wasn't steering right. So I picked one that was slightly bigger. It's starting to lift up, so I'm going to put my fingers over here. It's sewing just fine. Now, did you notice that I undid the bottom of my blade to take that out? Instead of trying to back out by sawing, I just undo the bottom and lift it out. Well, I'm going to show you the differences in sewing long strokes and short strokes. So if I do a long stroke without pushing, hear how nice this sounds. That's what you want it to sound like. Now, if you saw short little strokes, one, you're going to dull your blade really quick, and also you'll notice that this is nice and straight. Then I started sawing short strokes. When you squiggle or make curves, you want to always keep the saw frame going up and down. If you stop and twist and turn, you're twisting the blade. Okay, now I'm going to stop and twist. See how different that is? Now if I relax, let this untwine, and start again, I'll be fine. So you want always have your saw blade going up and down while you're turning. And there's two ways of turning. You can either turn the saw blade, or you can turn the metal. I'm going to demonstrate turning corners. I'm going to lube my blade, and it doesn't take much lube. Start on my straight end. Now when I'm ready to turn my corner, make sure this is held down with my saw blade going straight up and down and not pushing forward at all. I'm just going to move my blade around. Now this is where blades will break if you have the cheap ones, because they don't have rounded backs. And that back corner will catch and grab and snap. You can see I was able to make a turn very easily. So now I'm going to turn again. Just up and down, staying in place. And I'm going to come in and start sewing. I like to saw downward to get going. Okay, now I'm right here next to the saw line. So I'm going to turn and saw outside the line. I want to keep the metal where I'm sawing inside this area here. I don't want to come out here where it's not supported. So always have both sides of the bench pin supporting the metal. So I come up here, got this side on that side of the bench pin, and this side on that side of the bench pin. And I'm going to hold it both sides like this. Long, even strokes. sew into the wood, it's okay. Just back out. That's what the wood's there for. I'm coming up on the curve now, so I want to keep my saw going up and down as I go around that corner of the curve so I don't break my blade. And I'll continue to support it here. When you get close to the edge here, where it's going to connect here from coming in, don't push. Let the saw blade feed itself. There. I want to cut out the center of this piece. This is called piercing. And to do that, I need to drill a hole through here. But before I drill a hole, I need to lightly punch in here so that the tip of the drill bit can catch the little divot that I put in. I'm not trying to punch a hole all the way through the metal right now. I just want to create a dimple. So I'm going to take my hammer and just lightly tap it. Now if I did this on the wood, over here the wood's not very sturdy, and what would happen is when I tap it, the wood would cave in and so would my piece of metal. So you always want to do this on a steel block. Drill straight down and go slow so I don't dull my drill bit. And I'm going to string this on, put this through the hole, up to there. And if I have it up here, it doesn't put weight on my saw blade and make it go down. See, if you bring it down here, it's just going to slide down and off. So up here, put this on here like that, in there, push in and tighten it. If I've got it right, it should be tuned, and I should be able to see my place where I'm supposed to cut out. Now I'm going to saw the inside section out, but I want to saw along the inside of this line instead of the outside. If I saw along the inside right here, then I can always file it down to the outside edge. So I've got my hole here, and I'm just going to keep this balance between this small area out here. I don't want it out here, I want this whole section to be supported. So I'm going to come in like this here and just start sawing. This comes up, hold it down. Long straight strokes. When I get to this point, I'm going to keep it moving and turn the saw or the metal, one of the two. Now as I come around to the hole here that I've drilled, I'm going to take it slow, don't push. There it goes. Now what I'll do is I'll undo the saw on the bottom and pull my piece out. Let's say a minute ago I was sawing and my blade broke, and so I removed it and then I put this new blade in. So I'm sawing along and now this blade becomes loose and I don't know why. It's more than likely because when you put this blade in, there's still a part of the old blade still stuck in there. So look out for that too. And this is another reason why people's blades break. They do this too large, too big, and this gets turned around, twisted. You see how this edge here is a square edge and this edge here is rounded? It's that way for a reason. You want this square edge against this square edge here. As if the curved edge is here, this is going to allow this to rock, and that's going to break your blade. So never undo this all the way, and make sure that this square edge is against this square edge. This is a picture of a inexpensive saw frame. You can find these on eBay sometimes, and you also can notice in this picture that the saw frame and the blades are being sold together. This is a red flag. Those are cheap blades and they're going to break. But look at the saw frame. This is a problem that I have with students who buy these, and that's how I know about this. When you put the saw blade between the washer and that nut that holds it tight against the saw frame, it doesn't stay attached. It loosens itself up, because if you take a really close look at this picture, that washer on the back of the saw frame is grooved, which allows the saw blade to work its way loose. So what happens when the blade is loose? It's going to break. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this class. If you did, give us a thumbs up and subscribe and get out there and practice. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I'll answer them for you. For the next class, if you don't know anything about bench pins, then look into that class. It's going to show you what bench pins are for and how they are all different. So give it a look. Until next time, go make some jewelry.